Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins. I'm joined as always by Brandon Scott. You know him as B. Scott. Well, the NBA preseason is right around the corner, and so it's time to talk some Indiana Pacers. You know, we had our month of previews for all the football stuff, and now that we're in October, which is the greatest sports month of them all, it's time to get into some Indiana Pacers conversation. Today we're going to talk about what excites us about this year's team, the storylines you should be watching heading into the season. We're also going to predict where the Pacers will end up in the Eastern Conference, how we think they're going to fare, and we're also going to get into some national stuff as well. I mean, we got to give our NBA Finals previews and see where that's all going to end up. So, or not preview, but just give our predictions for who we think is going to be hoisting the trophy at the end of the year. So, it's time to get into some hoops. B. Scott, of course, we're smack dab in, a basketball state, excuse me. So, excited to get back and talking about some Pacers, especially because, I feel like when we've talked about Pacers before on the podcast, it's been kind of doom and gloom, because I think the last time we've talked about them, we've talked about Victor Oladipo leaving, and we've talked about, the Paul George trade, and the Pacers not being able to win playoff games, and all this and that. And, now I feel like the Pacers are on a good path, and I'm actually really excited to see how they do this season.
Yeah, like you said, this is an exciting time of the year. You got college football in full swing, NFL in full swing, Major League Baseball in the postseason. Speaking of which, got to give a moment of silence to one of the great October pitchers in Tim Wakefield, who passed away just the other day. As a Red Sox fan, that one hurt. My opinion, the greatest knuckleballer ever.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite pitchers. I'm not a Red Sox fan, but I did enjoy watching him pitch. Anyone that could throw a knuckleball, it was just something to watch. And one of my buddies texted me that I wasn't aware that he was dealing with anything. So
I wasn't either. It shocked me. Yeah. Threw me off guard for sure. But that's the best thing about, October. Tim Wakefield lived for those moments. So what better way to honor him than really kind of get more pumped up about this month. So, but hey, you're right though. The Pacers, there's finally some excitement around them, and it is, that excitement is real because you have seen the progress this team has made, and you've seen the path that they have been on, and you were okay with the rebuild because you felt there was a plan. You knew you could see the plan. So now things are starting to kind of come around. We're coming over the bend, I think, over the hilltop into where the Pacers are hoping to be.
Yeah, and what really helps too is you got a guy like Halliburton locked up. I know that, in the current state of the NBA that, does, nothing really means anything. You can, because I'm pretty sure Damian Lillard had just gotten an extension right before he asked to be traded away. So you never know, but, so far so good. You got your star, the guy you're going to build around, locked up for a while, and hopefully that means, that can lead to some success. Because I think that's where we kind of ended up, because we used to talk Pacers more than we do now. But it was just kind of getting to a point where we were like, it seems like it doesn't really matter what the Pacers do, because there's going to be, that bigger and better team that's going to just go out and get, 3 superstars and be amazing. So, but yeah, I really think the Pacers are in a good spot. And we've seen, what's really intriguing too is that we've seen the last few seasons some small market teams getting, hoisting the trophy, getting the NBA Finals,
Milwaukee,
win.
Toronto, Denver. But what's great about the Pacers is that they're getting back to where they want to be the way they have done it historically, meaning draft, build your own talent. You make a few moves here and there to bring in some young up-and-coming talent that needs a fresh start, and you build the right pieces around in free agency. You're not going to get the stars in free agency, but you're going to build the right pieces around it. And you look at when the Pacers were really good during the Paul George era, it was Paul George, Roy Hibbert, Lance Stevenson, a lot of guys that they drafted. And then George Hill, they brought him in on a trade. David West was a key free agent signing. You're always going to have maybe one there. And then you look back in the 90s with, Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, a lot of different draft pieces there. So the Pacers are getting back to the way they've built teams in the past, and all signs are pointing up. Maybe not contenders right immediately, but the trajectory is pointing upward at this point.
Well, it all gets back going on Sunday. It's the first preseason game. It's the 8th. The Pacers will be at Memphis. That's followed by a trip to Houston to play the Rockets on the 10th. Final 2 preseason games are at home, Monday the 16th against the Atlanta Hawks, and then the final preseason game is on October 20th versus Cleveland. And then the Pacers will open the season Wednesday, October 25th at home against the Wizards, in the 2023-24 campaign will get underway. Looking at what the Pacers did this offseason, looking at acquisitions, they acquired Obi Toppin from the Knicks for 2 future second-round picks. A transaction to note, this isn't technically an addition, but they signed Tyrese Halliburton to a 5-year, $260 million max contract extension. That's what we talked about a little bit earlier. In the draft, the Pacers got Jarris Walker from Houston, Ben Shepherd out of Belmont, Mojave King out of the G League Ignite. He will play overseas this coming season. And Isaiah Wong out of Miami. Some departures. One that we were kind of sad to see, and that's Chris Duarte. He was traded to the Kings. I know we were super excited when he got drafted a couple of years ago and had a really good first season, but kind of tailed off.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that needed a change of scenery, perhaps.
For sure. So looking at this season just in general, kind of looking at what excites us about this season before we kind of get into some other storylines here. What excites me about this Pacers season is I'm just excited to see the team potentially get back in the postseason and seeing this young core continuing to gel, continuing to mesh together, because we're on year 3 of the current rebuild, and this squad has continued to improve each and every year. In 2021, 2022, they were 25-57, 13th in the East. Last year, they were 35-47, 11th in the East. The Pacers were in the playoff hunt as late as mid-January last season. They were 6th in the East on January 10th, 23-18 at the time. That was around the time that Tyrese Halliburton started dealing with injuries. He had played 40 of 42 games to that point. He did miss 24 of the final 40 games. And speaking of the absence of Halliburton, the Pacers were 28-28 in games where he played, and 7-19 in his absence. So that means a healthy Halliburton should mean the Pacers should hover around 500, and if things click, who knows? Maybe they end up back in the postseason. So, I mean, and I know that, 20 of the 30 teams get in the postseason, but still, to get back to that point would still be a good thing for Indiana.
Yeah, I'm really excited about seeing how this young core can take that next step. Because, this is Tyrese Halliburton's team now. I think the experience he gained from being on Team USA for the World Championships over the summer is going to be invaluable. One, because it's leadership experience. It's more time for him at a high level, but it could pay dividends in the future with some of these guys wanting to come team up with him. Because obviously you're seeing the Pacers are willing to make investments now. But I'm just really excited to see how this team can gel. Miles Turner is coming off of a career year. So it'd be interesting. This is like the first off season or first time going into a season that we haven't had Miles Turner trade rumors. Right. It's like he is now officially a part of the future plans. So, it's time. I'm very curious to see how that happens. Benedict Mathurin, can he make that jump from year 1 to year 2 that you see so often, and who can step up at the 4 slot? Because that right now on paper, when you look at this team, the 4 slot is probably the weakest position for the Pacers. I can't say it's the weakest, but it's the most unproven. I guess I'll say not the weakest, but the most unproven. So I'm interested to see how that position can come together, especially with the drafting of Jarris Walker and then the free agent or the trade acquisition of Obi Toppin. Is Jarace Walker going to end up at the 4, or is he going to play more of the 3? How's that going to all pan out? So there's a lot of really cool, interesting storylines surrounding this team heading into the season.
Now, you mentioned trade talks. This is being the first year that we haven't really had a lot of Miles Turner trade conversation, but that kind of segues us beautifully into our hot and cold questions, because we've got 3 of them. If you're new to the show, I'm gonna give a take, and we're gonna say whether or not that take is a hot take or a cold take. And the first one that I have on here is Buddy Hield will be traded before Jonathan Taylor does. This was kind of a it's kind of funny that they're both, we talked about in the Colts preview, the Jonathan Taylor trade, what's going to happen there. And now we have trade discussions going on with another star player on an Indiana team that we're previewing. And it's eerily similar. How these two situations are. The Pacers/Colts are looking to acquire first-round talent for their superstars after extension talks broke down. Many believe that they'll only get second-round talent at best, which, in the NBA, that's like basically, second round is not really super important, or at least, from the untrained eye. I'm sure there's a NBA diehard that's like, oh, you can find some really good talent in the second round. Okay, maybe, but it's you're really looking at the first round, and that's pretty much it. Both front offices have expressed hope to keep their superstar on the squad. And in all honesty, in my eyes, this waters are pretty muddy on both ends as far as, because I was, my brain was hurting when I was looking at, because I was like trying to go at it from, I was trying to actually predict it, like, oh, when might Jonathan Taylor get traded? Oh, when might Buddy Hield get traded? And it was actually hurting my brain because I was like, well, this article says this, and this article says that, and these execs think this, and this expert thinks that. I was like, you know what? This doesn't even, it's just a question that we're posing. I don't need to get that detailed with it. So I was like, you know what do I just actually think is going to happen? And for me, the NFL trade deadline is October 31st. Jonathan Taylor could play by week 5. He's looking to play this week. He's returning to practice, and he's got 4 games roughly to make a case for himself to be traded. So we might see him in this next month or so. If he goes off, then who knows. And Bleacher Report has the Pacers are at around 38 wins, which would still keep them around 11th. Which would still keep them at 11th and outside the playoff picture based on last year's records at the end of the year. That would still, the Pacers had 35 wins. They improved to 38. Last year, the 10th seed was like 41-41, so they would still technically be out. But in that same Bleacher Report article, as well as some other Pacers previews I've seen, the Pacers have a higher ceiling. Some people project them to be in the postseason. So honestly, I have this as being a cold take. I think the situation is, the Pacers have until essentially February to move Hield. He was 9th in the NBA last season in three-point percentage and has consistently been one of the best shooters from beyond the arc in the league. 8, nearly half of last season's playoff teams finished at the bottom of the league, in the bottom half of the league in three-point percentage, and if that trend continues into the regular season, then Hield will have a pretty solid market. And without looking into the money and the draft capital, because I know that's a big issue, you could see a team like Miami, who missed out on Damian Lillard, who was a team that was at the bottom of the three-point percentage last season. Maybe they're a possible landing spot for Buddy Hield, in a trade. Now, hopefully I projected Jonathan Taylor to go to the Bears. Hopefully the Heat fare better than the Bears have this season. But ultimately where I ended up with this is we've seen years and years of Miles Turner trade rumors that have never panned out. I feel like for like 5 years straight, we heard Miles Turner is going to get traded. Turner's going to get traded. He never did. And so I just don't have a lot of confidence. I don't really want the Pacers to move on, but I don't also have a lot of confidence that they will. And I could see this coming down to whether or not the Pacers are in the playoff hunt. I know another argument would be, well, the Pacers haven't really cared if they're in the playoff hunt as far as making moves, but I could see it being like, okay, Hield is helping us, so we're in the playoff hunt. Let's go ahead and keep him. He gives us a good chance to succeed. And if the Pacers are out of it, if Halliburton's hurt, and the Pacers are well under 500, then they say, okay, you know what? Let's see what we can get for Hield. Let's get something back. So I see it being a situation where the Pacers kind of wait and see how they're going to be, and where they're going to end up, and then making a decision closer to the trade deadline.
Yeah, so I mean, I do believe Jonathan Taylor will get traded before Buddy Hield, and mostly because I don't think the two situations are all that similar. One, Buddy Hield was he was brought in on a trade, and he was kind of contract filler to make the deal work out equitably as far as money goes. And the Pacers were just pleasantly surprised that with what they got from him. I don't think Buddy Hield has ever really been a part of the deep future plans for this team, and I think that's where they're kind of coming in at opposite ends on the contract talks. Buddy Hield hasn't made any mention of wanting a trade. He hasn't made any mention of not wanting to play for the Pacers. The Pacers have pretty much said, hey, look, we're kind of at an impasse right now, so while we'll keep talking, but at the same time, let's start looking to see if there's any trade partners out there, so that way we can maybe get you into the situation that is better suited for you for the future, that may give you that money opportunity. And Buddy's like, yeah, that's fine. At the same time, he's all on board with this team in the now. Whereas I don't feel like Jonathan Taylor is. I don't even know if Jonathan Taylor will even suit up this weekend, to be honest. I think he's done with the Colts. But I don't feel like this is a dirty breakup, ugly breakup or anything between the Pacers and Buddy Hield. It's just they're both wanting to look out for the best for him. But in the meantime,
the waters were muddy because I don't really know what to believe from the reports that I heard. That's all I'm saying on that end. I know
the fact that Buddy Hield hasn't come out and trashed anything makes me feel better, you know. And the fact also that during the preseason media day, the Pacers GM said, I mean, you're always looking, but Buddy Hield is part of this team. We want him to be a part of this team. So he said all the right things, and I don't know. I think the local media is trying to blow it into a Jonathan Taylor type situation when it's not. But I do believe, I mean, just based off of when trade deadlines are, Jonathan Taylor will be traded before Buddy Hield. And you're right. The Pacers are going to look at this like, where do we stand right now at around the trade deadline? And then is there somebody that's in a better situation that's like, okay, we're one shooter away from being in better contention. I mean, look at a team like the Lakers, for instance. That is a team that could come knocking at the trade deadline in February because they need an additional shooter to try to make a run during the postseason. So I think right now when you're looking, you're not going to get the value that is potentially there. Come trade deadline, when there's that desperate team that's like, man, I just need that one piece, then you might be able to get something of higher value. Because then when you're looking at the trade deadline and teams that are in contention, those teams are picking on the back half of the first round. So if they give you a first round pick, it's really essentially similar to an early second round pick, to be honest. So it's not much of a loss for them, for the contending team as far as draft capital goes, because what they're getting out of Buddy Hield is going to be better than what they get at the back end of the first round. But it'll be interesting. The only worry I have with the whole Buddy Hield situation is, how is this going to potentially hinder the development of Benedict Mathurin? Are they going to start Mathurin over Buddy Hield, or are they going to start Hield over Mathurin? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But at the same time, because Buddy Hield's not in the future plans, obviously, you really don't want that to hinder the growth of Mathurin.
Yeah, I had just seen some articles where they were talking about Hield could be moved like before the season starts. And I think if
I think
like
that's a bad.
that
That'd be
right.
bad.
Well, and I was thinking like that would be like this time in the trade deadline are really the only two times that kind of make sense. You either want to bring him in before the season starts, so which is why I posed the question the way I did. Hey, would they, because Jonathan Taylor, or technically Hield could be traded, this week because you're trying to get him before the preseason. But yeah, I think it's they're better suited, to wait and see on what happens because yeah, I think this team has the potential to do good things with Hield, even if it's just for one more year. Because yeah, I mean, for no matter what, this is going to be most likely the last year that Buddy Hield is in a Pacers uniform.
Oh yeah, and if that's the case, hey, he came in and played a wonderful role for this team, and I think people were pleasantly surprised because if you would have asked the Kings fans when he was part of that trade for Sabonis, they were like, okay, he's yours. We just want him out of here. He's taking up cap space, and he comes in here and started playing with a chip on his shoulder, and I really liked. He was one of those guys that he's probably not going to be viewed as one of the best Pacers of all time, and people may forget him, but you're going to look back and go, as some true Pacers fans are going to go, he was a really good Pacers player. It's kind of like when Peja Stojakovic was a Pacer, didn't light it up, but was just a solid player for the team at the right time.
Right. So moving on, the next take that I have is hot or cold. Jarace Walker will be the biggest impact. Will make the biggest impact of the newcomers. That was the Pacers, the first pick the Pacers made in this year's draft. However, for me, it's a cold take. For me, it's Bruce Brown. Both Brown and Obi Toppin are great in transition, which is a great compliment to Halliburton's play style. Brown is more versatile than Toppin and has a better resume. Brown has experience starting. He can come off the bench. He can play multiple positions. And of course, Brown comes from the Denver Nuggets, who won the NBA Finals this past year.
And they were sad to see him go.
Right. He averaged 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists in 29 minutes. For the world champion Nuggets last season, Toppin averaged 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 16 minutes a game for the Knicks last season. So I think Brown's play style and championship pedigree makes him a huge asset for the Pacers. I mean, having that kind of experience in the locker room, especially if this team is in the playoff hunt, is going to mean the world. So I think Brown's going to be a big impact for the Pacers.
Yeah, I think it's a cold take as well, but I'm going to say it's Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin has a chip on his shoulder as well. He was kind of overlooked and drafted over by the Knicks, and he's ready to prove he's got what it takes. So I think it's going to be Obi Toppin that's going to be the most pleasant surprise. Bruce Brown is going to be a good player for the team. He's going to be like that locker room guy that is kind of the glue. But I think when it comes to what you're going to see the most of, I think Obi Toppin's going to jump off the page at you.
For sure. And then the last hot or cold take, hot or cold, Tyrese Halliburton will be an all-star starter this season. Last year, he made his first all-star game. The NBA all-star game is in Indy this year, which is going to be real cool. And I mean, I wondered, I looked into this because I was like, you see this sometimes in the MLB all-star game. They'll sometimes, if the stars align, if like, let's say the all-star game this past year's in Seattle, Luis Castillo, he didn't get the start, but like if he was pitching really well towards the all-star break, they might put Luis Castillo as the starter for the AL because he's the hometown, player. I thought, has that been something that's happened in the NBA all-star game? And 2018 was the first season the All-Star game went away from the conventional East-West format, went to 2 superstars picking their teams. Now, granted, it still kind of stayed East-West, but it kind of just changed how the selections are made. And since then, only one All-Star game has featured a starter representing the host city. That was Kemba Walker representing the Hornets at the Charlotte All-Star game in 2019. That season for Kemba, He averaged 26 points per game, 6 assists, 4 rebounds in 2018-2019. Like I said, the 2024 All-Star Game is in Indy. Last year, Halliburton averaged 21 points, 10 assists, 4 rebounds per game. And if Halliburton can stay healthy and can replicate what he did last year, there's no question in my mind that he'll be an all-star. And looking at some of the rosters these past few years for the all-star game, I definitely see an avenue for Halliburton to squeak in. I know he's not, he's not one of the kind of marquee all-stars yet, so maybe, that's going to play a factor just as much as anything else. But of course, maybe to your point earlier about the whole, playing for the Team USA, maybe that helps him in that regard, kind of gain some popularity with some of those people that will be making the decisions on whether or not he's a starter or not. But for me, it's a hot take. I think this year, like I said, I think this team's going to be better. They're going to be a fun team to watch. I think Halliburton, kind of continues to make a push, has, breaks out even more this year. And so I think not only does he make the All-Star game, he's going to start the All-Star game coming up in February.
I want to say this is a hot take because it's an Indy, but I just feel like the position he would start at is the position Damian Lillard. Well, I guess, it's tough because you're right. They do pick their own teams now. It's not the old East versus West. Okay, I'm going to go hot take then. I'm going hot take because it's in Indy. I think somebody will pick him to be their starter because of the it being an Indy. And you're right, the Team USA factor is huge as well. The camaraderie that he made with some of those younger players that are stars as well is huge. So I'm going to say it's a hot take, but mostly because it's an Indy and that wins over the home crowd.
Yeah, well, and I think too, there's a chance that the Pacers can be this, because we saw this a while, and look, don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying that the Pacers are going to be the Nuggets in a few years. I'm just saying that for a long time, the Nuggets were that fun young team, that was kind of, the up-and-coming squad, and I think the Pacers can possibly be that team, this year, where, they're a fun team to watch. They're a team that maybe some people slept on before the season, and now they're better. And I think Halliburton is going to be a big part of that if that's the case. And so, yeah, I think just, there's a chance that if they're kind of the fun, sexy team going into the All-Star break, then that helps them even more. And so I think, he may not be as popular. There are some players that might go ahead of him, but I think there is a chance that they may give the nod to the local kid.
The thing that helps him is the fact that he does play a position that is a little bit more of an exciting position, and he is more of an exciting player. Like if you look at the past, our last All-Star was Domas Sabonis. He's not an exciting player.
No.
He was just a solid player. He was a good player. He made a difference on the court, but Halliburton's at least exciting. And so that adds a different dimension because look, the All-Star game's not about the best. And it's really about the most entertaining, and Halliburton's entertaining.
Now we're gonna go away from the hot and cold takes. We're gonna now go to over under. We're gonna talk about wins as well as where the Pacers will finish in the East. So as far as wins go, the DraftKings projection right now is over under 38.5 wins. I'm going over. The Pacers were 23-18 halfway through the season last year, on pace for a 46-36 record. Also, as I mentioned earlier, they're 28-28 with Halliburton in the lineup. Of course, he missed some time. This team has improved every season during the current rebuild, and there's a lot of positive signs pointing to a 40-win season, and that's where I think the Pacers are. I don't think it's going to be high 40s necessarily, but I think it's definitely going to be, in that 500 range. And as far as the East, they finished 11th last season in the Eastern Conference, and I think the Pacers are going to be above that as well. The Bulls finished 10th in the East last season at 40-42. So even if the Pacers don't end up at 500, they could finish literally below 500, and they're still got a decent chance with the way the East has been for the last, billion years, it feels like. They still will have a chance to be, in the mix, in that range to possibly make the play-in tournament. And I think the play-in tournament is a really good possibility for this Pacers team. And I get it. It's because literally everyone gets an invite to the dance now. But I still think that the Pacers are going to be a team that can get into that play-in tournament.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going over for the wins and over for the placement. I think they get over 38.5. I think I'm going to say roughly probably about 42 to 45 wins, I think, is a strong possibility with this team. Because look, and yeah, I think they're going to get into the playoffs. They may even get in out. I mean, okay, I guess because it's 7, 8, 9, 10 for the play-in. I mean, I think they get in on the higher range of the play-in tournament, at least. Because everybody's like, oh, you look, and like the East got better. The Celtics got Drew Holiday now. The Bucks have Damian Lillard. It's like, yeah, the East as a whole got better, but those two teams are already two of the top teams. So it's not like some other team that's kind of middling around the Pacers level got any better. Look, the Bulls probably got worse. I mean, the Cavs are probably one of the few teams there that you can say are a better team. The Heat, I'm not sold on the Heat anymore. I think that team's starting to fall apart, and I think the losing out on Damian Lillard is going to hurt them.
Not only that, it just feels like the Heat here lately, they'll have, because I was looking into that too, and I'll get into it more when we make our East predictions for like who makes the Eastern Conference Finals and stuff like that. The Heat seem to have this where because I looked at the last time they made the NBA Finals, that was what, 2020. In the next 2 years, they were like losing early in the early stages of the postseason, and then of course they make the finals last year. So it seems like they'll have that 1 year every once in a while where they make a deep run, and the rest of the time they're not consistent. So I mean, I wouldn't bank on them to. I mean, they could. It's hard to tell. They could either be really awesome and be that team, or they could not be that team.
And who knows how emo Jimmy Butler is going to be? Right. But I just feel like the Pacers made moves to help themselves get better, and the already really good teams got better. So that doesn't move the needle or affect the Pacers at all, because those really good teams are already going to be up there in the 1, 2, 3 seed line. Well, the Pacers aren't contending at that level. I think the Pacers have made the right moves to win more games and to bump themselves up the seeding line, and actually be within the playoffs this year. So yeah, over and over for me.
So before we wrap up the Pacers conversation, I want to give a bold prediction. I want each of us to give a bold prediction for this Pacers season. My bold prediction is the Pacers win their first playoff, not play-in, playoff game since 2018. I think they make their way into the East bracket and get a playoff win. It may not be as it may be as an 8th seed. It may be them getting, it may mean they lose 4-1 against the Bucks in the first round of the postseason. But I think they get their first win, because I think that kind of, like I said, that's what kind of soured us on covering the Pacers all the time. And it's not to say that we're bandwagon fans. It's just, hey, we, tired of talking about the Pacers losing. And so it's like,
good local teams gets more views.
Exactly.
Bad local teams don't.
Exactly. And it's like, because not only it seemed like because there were years, of course, not too long ago, and especially in the early days of the podcast, like the Pacers were going toe to toe with, the LeBron Cleveland teams, and were actually, holding their own. And then towards the end there, it was, yep, the Pacers got swept again. That kind of sucks. And so, it wasn't a whole lot to talk about. So I think now, they're in a good. They're, like we've said, they're getting into a good spot, and I think that they actually make the postseason. They make the actual bracket itself, and they end up winning a postseason game. I think that's where they're at. Hey, we, as we speak right now, the Twins ended their 18-year playoff drought where they had not won a playoff game. If that can end, So can the Pacers streak. I think they win a playoff game this year.
I don't know if you can really call mine a bold prediction, but it's something that just hasn't happened in a long time. The Indiana Pacers get 2 players into the All-Star game. Obviously, it's not too of a bolder prediction. I think Tyrese Halliburton gets in. And then that second spot, I'm either going to say it's Miles Turner or Benedict Mathurin. So I'm going to say that's my bold prediction. 2 players on the All-Star rosters for the Indiana Pacers.
I like that. I think that's very attainable. I think that could be good.
And if that happens, you're moving in the right direction as far as entertainment value goes.
Yeah.
And then maybe that means they'll get off of Bally Sports Network.
Yeah, that's going to be tough, is the fact that it's so, impossible.
You can't watch the game.
Right, exactly. So before we wrap up, definitely want to get into some NBA predictions on the whole. I want to give East Finals, West Finals, and then our NBA Finals prediction. I'll go ahead and give my East West, and B Scott, you give your East West, and then we'll wrap it up with the finals. So for me, Eastern Conference Finals, my prediction, I'm going off the reservation here. This is going to be the most off the wall prediction ever. I'm going Bucks over Celtics. To be the Eastern Conference Finals. I think the Bucks get the leg up because of the Lillard trade. I thought about predicting the Bucks over the Cavs. I thought that would be kind of a fun pick, kind of going off the same, idea of the Eagles beating the Lions in the NFC Championship game. I think that would be cool to see the Cavs on that level again. The Heat always seem to be a pesky team come the postseason. Like I said, it seems like they either are, you never know what you're going to get come the postseason. Either they're going to be that, team that goes toe-to-toe with the team we thought was going to be, Eastern Conference Finals lock, or they flame out in the first round. You just never know. But the Celtics have made 3 conference finals appearances in the last 5 years, and I think they get back there. I mean, they've consistently get back to that stage every single year, it seems like. And then over in the West, I've got the Warriors over the Nuggets. It's hard to pick against Denver getting back to at least the West Finals, so that's why I have them there. I'd like to have the Suns there in a postseason series, but I just think the Warriors are better. I actually forgot Chris Paul is on the Warriors. Excuse me. So I think that gives them a strong contention. And, KD is on the Suns, but I don't know. I feel like, it seems weird to say this about KD, but I feel like he's not been super reliable in the postseason, mostly because of injury. So I don't know where they're gonna be at, if they're gonna be. I mean, I know they've got more than just Kevin Durant, but I mean, obviously that's the piece they're hoping gets them over the edge. And I don't, it's hard to tell if he's going to be healthy or not, come the postseason. So, Warriors over Nuggets for me, that sets up a Warriors and Bucks NBA Finals.
So, spoiler alert, I'm also going with the Bucks and the Celtics in the East Conference Finals as well. But look, those 2 teams are the best teams in the East. It's them, and then there's everybody else, just to be honest. But I'm gonna take the Celtics over the Bucks. Honestly, Damian Lillard is going to be a huge addition for the Bucks. I think, though, they are going to regret losing Jrue Holiday, and because now Jrue Holiday is with the Celtics, I think that helps the Celtics. Look, Jrue Holiday is like one of those guys, kind of like a Bruce Brown, where he is a glue guy. He is that guy, that piece that brings everything together. He's not your star player, but man, he's going to do everything he needs to do to help your team win. He's going to make your team better. And I feel like him going to the Celtics, wow, that team. I mean, you still have Jason Tatum, you still got Jaylen Brown, you got Kristaps Porzingis. They lost Marcus Smart and now Robert Williams as well, but man, and Malcolm Brogdon. But I really do like the addition of Jrue Holiday for them, and I think that puts them over the top to get to the NBA Finals. They've been so close here recently, and it's, it kind of has that feel of early LeBron the early LeBron-led Cavs where he's so close and then finally get over the hump to get to the finals. I think that's the case for the Celtics this year. Out west, I am going with the Warriors over the Suns. I just feel like the Suns are the Suns always just seem to turn it on in the postseason a little bit. And I'm afraid that for the Nuggets, again, these glue type players, the loss of Bruce Brown is going to affect them. Not immensely. I mean, they're still going to make a deep run and everything, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run to the finals. But right now, I'm just picking the Warriors over the Suns because I feel like this could potentially be the last run for the Warriors, and they know it. It's that their time is starting to come to a close, and they're looking to go out with a bang. So I got the Warriors versus the Celtics in the NBA Finals.
All right, so I think we're kind of on the same wavelength. It seems we'll see if our NBA Finals align here. My NBA Finals is I have the Warriors over the Bucks in the NBA Finals. I think a lot of people are going with the Bucks right now after the trade for Lillard, so I'm just gonna zag on that for the most part because I'm not gonna get into the nitty gritty of this matchup at the moment because I like I said I think they're two really good teams, and again. Who doesn't love the storyline? That would be Chris Paul getting a ring finally. If that were to happen, that would be really awesome. And then for IU fans still listening to the program, if you are still listening, Trace Jackson Davis get a ring as well. He's on the Warriors. So that would be something I'm sure IU fans would love to hold over people's heads is, oh, hey, look, Trace Jackson Davis has an NBA championship. So I think I've got the Warriors over the Bucks to get a championship. And yeah, you're right. This is probably one of the not one of the last ones they'll get, but definitely as they start to kind of come back down to earth. Of course, I mean, some would say they've already been back down to earth. They hadn't won before a couple of years ago. They hadn't won since 2018. Or something like that, but still, I think this might be their championship window is definitely closer to close than it is open. So who knows if they're on the kind of the tail end here. So I got the Warriors over the Bucks in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I have the Warriors over the Celtics because of the same thing. Look, their window's coming to a close. They realize it, but at the same time, I think Chris Paul's career is coming to a close, and they want him to be able to go out on top. I mean, this is a team that, always has played. They're always playing for something or somebody else that, you can never, I don't know why, but the Warriors are just one of those teams that you just can't hate them. I don't know if it's because, I don't know if it's because of the underdog mentality they've had where a lot of their players have had for a while. Like Steph Curry was always kind of that underdog player that was outperforming his physical attributes. Or just the wholesome nature you feel from that team when you see Steph Curry and his daughter. I mean, I don't know. It's just
you've got Steve Kerr, who's a great coach, very likable coach. You've got Stephen Curry, who is a very likable superstar. He's never really been considered, at least in my mind. I'm sure some OKC fans or some Clippers fans or whoever probably think that he might be a villain, but he's not really been that villain. He's been, especially because they played in the finals against each other. He was kind of the great anti-person to LeBron for a while. So I think a lot of people who hated LeBron like Curry because he kept beating him in the finals. So you've got that, and then the fact that this team, in the age of super teams, we've talked about it on the podcast before. In the age of super teams. They've got a super team, but by growing it from, sure, yeah, they got KD, for those last couple of championships, but those first few when they were winning 73 games, I know they didn't win the finals that season. I'm just saying when they were in that, streak of winning a bunch of games, they had, Steph, who they drafted, they had Draymond, who they drafted, they had Clay, who they drafted. They weren't going out and saying, hey, which three superstars want to come to San Francisco, Oakland to win some NBA Finals? No, it was all kind of homegrown, which you'll love to see. So there's a lot of likability with that franchise.
And they have stuck with that team.
Yeah.
I mean, that trio there has they've had every opportunity to maybe want to go to an even bigger market than San Francisco, and they've stuck it out, highs and lows. I mean, that trio saw quite a few lows as well. So I don't know. I feel that's a good story. So I'm going with the Warriors to win the NBA championship this year.
I like where your head's at. I think that's a good way to look at it, because I think they're going to be there too. So,
then on that note, it's going to be the Lakers.
Oh my gosh, yeah, probably. Well, I mean, it's hard to tell because, like, you know,
the Lakers. I don't even know if they're going to struggle.
Well, but also, like, if you're LeBron, do you want the Lakers to struggle so they can then maybe draft Bronny, or do you want them, like, are you going to do well? Like, it's going to
be... they can be middle of the pack and they can get Bronny. Everybody's putting Bronny up on this pedestal, and I don't even know if Bronny's going to be able to play basketball.
True.
I mean, that heart condition, it's the real deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he might be able to play in college, but I don't know if anybody's going to take a chance on him in the pros, health-wise, for him, just for a personal thing. But everybody thinks because his last name is James and his dad is LeBron, he's automatically going to be a number 1 overall pick and the next great player. It's like, guys, he's good, but he's I don't think that. I think that's why he ended up at USC. To be honest, I think all the Blue Bloods recruited him because if they didn't, that looked bad. But I think deep down, I don't think the big Blue Bloods really wanted him. I mean, look, it came down to like Ohio State and USC, and he chose USC because that's where his family's at.
Right. So. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for hanging out. Remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. You can find us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. Go over to the YouTube channel if you're not already there. If you listen to us on the podcast app, go over to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, ring the bell. Also, go check out the TikTok channel as well at 3C Media over on that end. And remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
Well, we previewed the NBA this week. Next week, we're going to be previewing some college basketball. It's going to be a lot of fun diving into Purdue, IU, Notre Dame, all that fun stuff. It'll be a good podcast. Can't wait to bring it to you. But until then, have a good week, everybody.